yesterday's class, we have in fact talked about in yesterday's class the significance or the importance of public administration. That was the last thing that we had discussed yesterday. Okay. So what we are going to do today is, first of all, we are going to take up a recap of what we have discussed. And once we complete that recap, then we are going to move on to the discussion of how public administration has evolved as a discipline. Okay, so today's class would be related to evolution of public administration as a discipline. However, let's start with our discussion on the revision of yesterday. And what did we talk about yesterday? Yesterday, the very first thing that we did was we looked at the definition of public administration, which captured the broader view of, or the most contemporary view of, public administration. That is what we no that's what we did yesterday. In fact, that's how we started our discussion yesterday. So what we saw was that a definition which was given by Negro, which was related to a definition which was given by Negro, which was related to the most contemporary, the broadest possible definition of public administration, where the very first thing that Negro said was that public administration is a cooperative group effort in a public setting. Now, what does that mean? A cooperative group effort in a public setting? It means that public administration has to do with administration, because a cooperative group effort, we had seen in day before yesterday's class, that cooperative group effort is how we define administration. So a cooperative group effort in public setting. So the term public setting, meaning that we are talking about the government. So administration in the government is what public administration is. That is how Negro started it was the first aspect of the definition. The second aspect of that definition was that it covers all the three branches. Now this is where Negro differed from the previous definitions that we saw, which was given by Woodrow Wilson, or for that matter, the definition given by L.D. White. And both Wilson and White considered that public administration was only concerned the executive organ. It only concerned the executive organ of the state, and it had nothing to do with the legislative or the judicial organ. In fact, this was the very basis for Woodrow Wilson advocating that administration to be a separate discipline. It had to be a separate discipline, because Wilson talked about dichotomy of politics, administration, dichotomy. Wilson talked about dichotomy, and the dichotomy concept that was there, it differentiated that the policy execution organ was different from the policy making. That is, the politics and administration were different from each other. And therefore, Wilson argued the very concept of the separate discipline for administration. Okay. And here he disagrees to that idea. He says, no, public administration is not just limited to the executive organ. Rather, public administration is going to cover executive, legislative, as well as the judicial organs, meaning it is not only execution, and it also has to do with policy formulation. Then the definition also No, it also covers a very important point where it says that public administration is different from private administration. So there is a difference between public and private administration, but in the contemporary times, public administration is closely related to private administration to deliver community services or public services to the community. Now, this is what we see as of today. Public administration is not our traditional understanding, because our traditional understanding of public administration is okay. We are talking about the government. So whatever administration, whatever is going on in the government is what public administration is. But this is where this differs. And what is being seen is that yes, Negro believes that there is a difference between public and private administration, but in the contemporary times, there is a close association between the two. And this close association is what you will find, it's the reality of today. Today, there are number of organizations which are private organizations, and these private organizations do involve themselves. They are very much involved in providing public services. So that is also something that was covered. Clear? So a broadest definition of public administration was given by Negro, and we discussed that yesterday. Okay. Now, after which we also saw that there was an interrelationship, this part, and then we moved on to the significance. And in the significance part, we discussed two aspects. The first aspect was that today, what exactly is the role that is played by administration? Where no, we emphasized on how administration today is responsible for number of factors, number of things that the administration performs, number of activities. So administration is responsible for economic development. Administration is responsible for maintenance of polity. Administration is responsible for stability. Administration is responsible for order. Administration is responsible for planning. Administration is responsible for protection of the weaker section of the society. It is, it is important for formation of public opinion. It influences public policy. That means each and every aspect of each and every aspect of the government and the functions of the government that is there, it is influenced by public administration. So if we go back to Wilsonian's concept and how Wilson defined public administration, so what Wilson said was that public administration is the most obvious part. It is the executive part. It is the most obvious part of the government. And that is absolutely correct, because what we see is that on each and every sphere of the functioning of the government, there is an involvement of public administration. So yes, it is the most obvious part. And finally, we talked about the growing importance of public administration. So we saw that for multiple reasons, public administration today, its importance has grown. And why has the importance grown? So we talked about how there has been, first of all, there has been a concept of welfare state that today we live in. So previously, there was an existence of a police state. A police state meaning a state where the responsibility that is there of the state was limited to law and order maintenance and only no revenue collection. Today, the state has transformed into from a police state into a welfare state. So because of this transformation, what has happened today is that a number of responsibilities gets added to what public administration does. So it is not anymore just law and order or revenue. It is responsible for education. It is responsible for health, for nutrition, for infrastructure, for economic development, for regulation of different organizations. Each and everything becomes the responsibility of public administration. Along with it, what has happened is that there has been a growth of science and technology. And this growth of science and technology has further, no, it has resulted into complexity of governance. And this complexity of governance has, no, it has improved, or you can say it has further emphasized on the concept of administration, the importance of administration. We had talked about how the state has adopted economic planning. So there was a laissez-faire state. That means everything was the responsibility of. It was no everything was the responsibility of market forces. But today that's not the case. Today, economic planning has been the core of the functioning of the state. With that, no, that does what? That means that administration today also involves itself in how the economy of a country functions. Then we also talked about what? We also talked about factors such as disaster management. We did see certain other factors also, like what has contributed to this. So there has been an increase in social disharmony. So it has contributed to looking at law and order. Has given rise to disaster management. Explosion of population has further created certain complexities, and all of this has further added to the importance, to the significance of public administration. Okay, this is where we ended our discussion yesterday. Okay, so if you have any questions related to yesterday's class, so you have the next few minutes, you can use it to ask me those questions, and then we will move on. Okay, judiciary and public administration is the same? No, judiciary is not same as public administration. Okay, so when the different scholars that are there, when they talk about a broader view of public administration, they are not saying that judiciary is public administration. What they are trying to say is that administration is also present in the field of, or you can say in the judiciary. Administration is also taken up there. So judiciary is not just about judicial interpretations of law, etc. There are administration, there is this management and administration that goes on in judicial branch as well. That is what it means. They are not the same. The new responsibilities can be the new and different sector of public administration. Nivedita, you have to rephrase your question. I was not able to understand that. The new responsibilities can be the new and different sector of work. Rephrase. Can we consider ministers as an administrator, or it is only restricted to bureaucracy? See, ministers that are there, they do take up administration, but they are not, no, they are not the part of, no, they cannot be called administrators, because the term administrator or no, civil servant, this term is used to describe the permanent bureaucracy or the permanent executive. Okay. Ministers do take up the role of administration. They do have that role. So they provide vision and leadership to organizations. They also, no, they also have the right to supervise how the implementation of their decisions or their vision is done. So they do, no, in a way, take up that role of administrator, but we don't use the term for them because they are part of a temporary executive. Okay, which means They are a part of political class, and therefore we don't use the term administrator for them. Okay, we don't use the term administrator for them. Due to complexity, there are many new sectors. Yes, of course. Due to complexity, growing complexity in governance, there are number of new things that has been added to administration, and all these new things that are there, all these new things have done what? All these new things have added to the functions performed by administration. Okay, so they have added to the functions that are performed by administration. Like if you see the board, we have written disaster management, है ना? Or for that matter, with the coming up of artificial intelligence, development of science and technology, there are issues like cyber issues that have been added to administration as of today. So these things have, there is an addition to their role. Kunjan, that aspect of political science and public administration, I'll cover that today. Okay. Any more questions? Okay, so let us begin today's discussion. And in today's discussion, what we will be doing is, in today's discussion, we will be talking about the evolution of public administration. How has public administration evolved? We will be talking about that. So the services under private organization, whether it is free or no, the private sector will always provide services with a cost, a service fee attached to it. So it's not free. Okay. Evolution of public administration. Now, when we come to this understanding of public administration and how it has evolved, the very first thing that we have to understand is that public administration is to be seen as two different things. It is to be separately seen as an activity and a discipline. Okay, so it is separately seen as an activity and a discipline. Okay, so when we talk about public administration, we have to differentiate public administration first as an activity, and then as a discipline, or we can say a systematic study. As a discipline or a systematic study. Okay, so we have to look at it differently, because when we talk about public administration as an activity, so public administration meaning administration under the government or administration undertaken by state. That is what is public administration as an activity, है ना? आपको ये समझना है कि डिफरेंस होता है एक्टिविटी में और डिसिप्लिन में. डिफरेंस है. एक्टिविटी is a completely different thing and a discipline is a completely different thing. ठीक है? When I say an activity, when I say an activity, I am talking about basically what activities are covered under public administration. Okay, and as a discipline, when we say as a discipline, we are talking about public administration as a systematic study, that is, as a theoretical subject. Okay, like most of the disciplines that no that are there, most of these disciplines you will find has a theoretical part and has a practical part. Okay, so activity is the practical aspect of administration, whereas discipline involves a study of administration, a systematic study of administration. Now when I say as an activity, public administration is one of the oldest activities. Why? Because as an activity, public administration, if we look at the history of administration as an activity, history of administration as an activity goes, no, it goes to the of era when state came into existence. State came into existence. है ना? As an activity, it is so old because the state that is there, the state has come into existence. The state has come into existence going back, no, going back to maybe 5,000 years, 6,000 years. There we see for the very first time instances of the state coming into existence. And public administration as an activity is, no, it starts with the state. So the day the state came into existence, the concept of state came into existence, public administration as an activity also came into existence. है ना? जैसे अगर हम बात करते हैं इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन, or for that matter, if we look at some very ancient civilizations, no, maybe going back to Indus Valley and some contemporary civilizations that existed. So we can see public administration as an activity there as well. Jaise, we have evidences to say that during the Indus Valley civilization, there were certain public infrastructure projects that was taken up. Like roads were built. There are evidences which say that during this civilization, you would see L-shaped roads. There was the great granary. There was the great bath. These were common public infrastructure projects, or you can say public infrastructure places, and people used to use them. Okay? So someone would have constructed that. Someone would have constructed that. And it would have done, generally, who would have done that? It would have been done by the organization working under the authority of the state, or whichever kind of state was in existence at that time. Whatever political structure was in existence at that time, on the basis of that authority, they would have been authorized to construct those roads, construct such public infrastructure public infrastructure projects. Now, what was that? It was an activity. It was public administration as an activity. All of these are examples of administration. If you see Egypt, and there, if you see, suppose, the pyramids. So pyramids, again, going back 4,000 5,000 years ago. Now what is this pyramid? This pyramid itself is an example of public administration as an activity. public administration as an activity. Why? Because these pyramids were also built by the authority of the state and the activities. That means it was the administration who executed it. So administration built the pyramids. So even when it comes to even when it comes to such 5,000, 6,000 years old, and those activities performed at that particular time, those activities are all the examples of administration, public administration. In India, you would see that 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years, evidences shows, it tells us that there were temples that were built. There are certain examples where the whole city is within a temple. So that construction of the temple that happened, it happened because of the authority of the state. So the ruler that was there, the kingdom, the rulers that were there, they had asked the administration of that day to build the temple. And accordingly, activities were performed to build it. Activities were performed to build that. What does that tell us? That public administration as an activity is as old as the very concept of state. The day the state came into existence, public administration also comes into existence as an activity simultaneously. है ना? As an activity, it comes into existence simultaneously. जिस दिन स्टेट बना, उसी दिन पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन एज एन एक्टिविटी शुरू हो गया. यानी अगर हम पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन एज एन एक्टिविटी की हिस्ट्री देखेंगे, तो what we can say without any doubt is the day the state comes into existence, public administration as an activity was born on the same day. So historically, as an activity, it is very old. It is very old. But the same cannot be said for public administration as a discipline. Matlab, as a systematic study, it is a very new discipline. A very new discipline. As a systematic study, it is a very new discipline. Because the evidence of public administration as a systematic study starts in the year 1887. Okay, when does it start? It starts in the year 1887. So the history of public administration as a discipline is approximately 140 odd years old. Okay, it's almost 140 odd years old. But as a activity, it is very old, because as an activity, it starts the day the state is born. As a discipline, it starts, no, as a systematic study, as a separate discipline, it starts in 1887. Why in 1887? In 1887, because of Woodrow Wilson. And Woodrow Wilson had, during this particular time, published an essay. He had published an essay, and that essay is considered to be the beginning of public administration as a discipline. It is considered to be the beginning of public administration as a. Okay? Till this particular point, do you have any questions before I start elaborating upon the discipline part of public administration, the evolution of the discipline part of public administration? Do you have any questions till this point? Anyone? Any questions? I'll come to Kautilya's version. Don't worry. I have not yet discussed Kautilya. I will be talking about Kautilya. Any question related to what I have discussed till now? You have 1 more minute, after which we move on. No doubts. Okay. So let us begin. Let us look at public administration as a discipline. When we say evolution, we are basically talking about public administration as a discipline. Okay? And again, as a discipline also, public administration, there are some individuals, very renowned theorists, very renowned academics, who have contributed to it. Like if you see Kautilya was one of the first contributors to public administration because he published the Arthashastra. And in Arthashastra, Arthashastra was a thesis which contained 15 books. And out of the 15 books, approximately 6 to 7 of those books that were there, it was primarily on the art of administration. So he had in great details talked about the Mauryan period, the administration that was going on during the Mauryan period, and his suggestions related to what should be done to make administration more effective. So there were scholars like Kautilya, who had contributed to administration by publishing Arthashastra. And it was not just Kautilya, but there were some other theorists also. There were some Western theorists like Aristotle. Aristotle had written again a thesis called Politics. He had written a thesis called Politics. Similarly, another thinker called Machiavelli, and Machiavelli did what? He published a thesis, a book, that is The Prince. And these things, whether it is Arthashastra, Politics, or for that matter, Prince, etc., these were the earliest publications which related to administration. It was the earliest publications related to administration. But after their contributions, it did not, the continuity of contributions did not come. So during that particular period, Arthashastra was the sole contribution. And after Kautilya's Arthashastra, there was no continuity with publications. That did not happen. Similarly, if you see the 15th century, you will find that there was a group of theorists in Austria called the Cameralists. And they also contributed to the study of public administration. But again, this group, they transformed with the emergence of democracy. they did not continue with the study of public administration, and they did what? They moved, transformed into the study of public law. They started studying public law, and they could not continue their study with public administration. So there were contributions. In India, there was contribution coming from Kautilya. In Western countries, again, there were contributions from Aristotle, Machiavelli, cameralists. To be more recent contributions, you would find cameralists, etc. They did contribute, but their contributions did not transform public administration into a systematic study. It did not transform it into a systematic study. It was, the contributions came, and the contributions were, one contribution coming, and there was no continuity of contribution. It did not result into public administration becoming a separate discipline, a field of study. That did not happen. And that is the reason why whenever we study the evolution of public administration, we don't consider contributions from Kautilya as the beginning or the start of public administration, or the study starting with the publication of politics or the Prince given by Machiavelli. These things or these publications are not considered to be the start of the discipline of public administration. Rather, the start of the discipline of public administration comes with Woodrow Wilson, and accordingly, there are different paradigms. There are different paradigms. There are different paradigms through which they evolve. The different paradigms through which they evolve. And the first paradigm is politics, administration, dichotomy. So we will do what? We will discuss each and every of these paradigms. We will look at when it started, what were the different phases through which it has evolved. We will look at that. Okay? The very first paradigm was the politics administration dichotomy. As we know, it starts in the year 1887. Why? Because the essay which was written by Woodrow Wilson was published in the year 1887. And this paradigm, this phase that is there, it continues for the next almost 40 years. And this paradigm or this phase is called as the phase of dichotomy, politics administration dichotomy. The second phase is called as the era of principles. Okay, principles of administration, or the era of principles, which continued for a period of 10 years, that is from 1927 continuing up to 1937. 1937. Okay. What is the meaning of the term dichotomy? We will come to it. I'm just first listing what were the phases, what were the paradigms through which it has evolved. I'm just listing them first. We will be taking up our discussion on each and every one of them, one by one. Okay. The third phase is called as the era of challenges. The era of challenges. And this particular phase, this phase continues from 1938. It continues from 1938 up to 1947. Up to 1947. The fourth phase is called as the era of crisis of identity. Crisis of identity. Okay. Crisis of identity, and it continues from 48 to 1970. 1970. The fifth phase is called as the public policy perspective. Public policy phase, or the public policy perspective, which starts from the year 1971 and is considered to be still continuing. Okay. It is a phase which is considered to be still continuing. So these are the 5 phases. This is the first classification when we are talking about how it has evolved. So this is a general understanding of how public administration has evolved. There is a contribution that has come also from a scholar, and Nicholas Henry is the scholar who has given his own phases. We will be talking about that also. But before we get into that, the very first thing is we will be discussing this part first. Okay? Okay. Have you written this down? So I will move on to the next page, and from the next slide onwards, I will be discussing each and every, we will be talking about each and every of this phase in details. We will be discussing that. Okay? I hope all of you have written this. So now give a heading, first paradigm, called the politics administration. Politics administration politics administration dichotomy. Politics administration dichotomy. Okay? Politics administration dichotomy, we will be talking about this phase. Now, so how did it all start? How did public administration started as a discipline? It started as a discipline from the dichotomy phase. So what happened was that in the year 1887, Woodrow Wilson published an essay in the year 1887. Woodrow Wilson published an essay titled Study of the Study of Administration, the Study of Administration. This was the title of the essay in the American Political Science Quarterly. Political Science Quarterly. So this Political Science Quarterly was the magazine that was there. Okay, it was the magazine that was there, and there he published an essay called the the essay was called The Study of Administration. And it was in this essay that he made a very important argument. What was the argument that he made? The argument that he made was that there is a need to separate politics and administration. What is required? He argued in this essay the separation of he argued the separation of administration from politics. He argued that there is a need to do what? He argued that there is a need to separate administration from politics. Now, why is he first of all arguing this? He is arguing this because if you go back to this particular era, administration during this era was studied under the domain of political science. Administration was not a separate discipline. It was studied under the domain of political science. And this is the reason. This is the reason why he, in the essay, argued that there is a need to separate it, because as of that time, it was not separated, and administration was considered to be within the domain of politics, and hence it was studied within the discipline of political science, not separately, but within the discipline of political science. It was studied within the discipline of political science. Now, this is where this argument comes. Okay, and what was the reason for this? Why did he argue that there is a need to separate it? Because if you remember, in the very first class itself, we did highlight what the reason was. We did highlight that. And what was the reason that we highlighted? Can anyone recall it? Why did Wilson argue a separation or a dichotomy between politics and administration? Why did he argue this? Who can recall this? Who will recall? Simple. It's not a rocket science. Those who are present on YouTube, can you recall what was the reason for this argument? What was the reason for this argument? Because lawmaking and execution are different. Politics is related to making of laws. Administration is related to execution of laws. Absolutely correct. That was exactly the reason. So what Wilson argued was that the domain of administration, that means the field of administration, is different from the field of politics. It's different from the field of politics. Why? Because Wilson believed that politics was primarily concerned with the act of policy or lawmaking. It was concerned with the act of policy making or the act of lawmaking. But that is not what the domain of administration was, because administration was responsible not for policy making or law making, rather for its implementation. So the responsibility of administration, the field of administration, was different from politics on this ground. It was different from politics on this ground. So what does he say? So he argues Wilson was of the opinion Wilson was of the opinion that the field of administration was different from the field of politics, politics as administration had to do with policy or law implementation whereas politics was responsible for law or policy making. Was responsible for law or policy making. So there was a difference between what was the responsibility of administration in comparison to the responsibility of politics. As you can see here, I have written this. I would highlight it so that you can see this also. Administration had to do with policy or law implementation. Politics had to do with law or policy making. So they belonged to what? They belonged to the different school. They belonged to different school or different fields, and therefore he advocated a separation. Okay. Now, देखो, what you need to understand is that there is a background of what Wilson is advocating. वो बैकग्राउंड क्या है वो भी हमें जानना है. देखो, एक्चुअली में वुडरो विल्सन was one of those scholars who in the late 19th century itself he conducted a comparative study. बहुत ध्यान से सुनना मैं क्या कह रहा हूं. I will explain each and every aspect of it. But it requires your full attention to all of you, whether you are through the app you have joined us or whether you have joined us through YouTube. It requires, if you need to really understand what I'm saying, you have to be very, very attentive at this point. हुआ ये था कि Woodrow Wilson, he took up a comparative study. So he compared administration of US to administration of some Western European countries. ठीक है, उन्होंने एक कंपैरिजन किया. He took up a comparative study. And while he took up this comparative study, he found that the administration in US was less efficient in comparison to administration of Western European countries. So administration in Western European countries were very, they were very efficient. But that was not the case in US. That was not the case in US. And when he made this observation, his essay, the study of administration, it was the result of this comparative study. It was the result of this study where whatever he was advocating was with an objective of making the American administration, American public administration more efficient. So he wanted to make the American public administration more efficient. And everything that he suggested, including dichotomy, it was because he wanted to bring efficiency in American administration. That is the reason why he suggested this. It was because of this that he made such suggestions. Interesting, क्या है जानते हो? It was Woodrow Wilson who later on also went on to become the president of US. So he was, he has that, a unique distinction of not only just being called the father of public administration, but he later on also became the president of, he became the president of US as well. और जो भी बातें उन्होंने कही, और there is a topic in your introduction itself which says Wilson's vision, and there we will discuss Wilson in details. But for now, what you need to know is what is the story behind, what is the basic idea behind calling for this dichotomy, calling for this separation. What was the basic idea here? What is the basic idea? And he wanted to bring efficiency. And for efficiency, he called for this dichotomy, called for this separation. Actually में वेस्टर्न यूरोपियन कंट्रीज में बहुत सारे ऐसी कंट्रीज थी जो कि उस समय डेमोक्रेटिक नहीं हुआ करती थी. 1887 we are talking about, and look at Germany. Germany was not a democratic country there, but it had a very efficient administration. So Wilson studied them. Now Wilson did what? Wilson did study them. And accordingly, Wilson wanted to do, okay, if we need to bring about, efficiency, we need to make certain changes. So what he thought was that if you look at the Western European countries, so these Western European countries did what? These Western European countries did not have democracy. So politics and administration, or more appropriately, administration did not concern itself with politics. क्योंकि पॉलिटिक्स उतना इंपॉर्टेंट ही नहीं था, है ना, क्योंकि डेमोक्रेसी नहीं थी, पब्लिक ओपिनियन का कोई इंपॉर्टेंस नहीं था. और विल्सन ने इसी बात को देखा कि ओके, पब्लिक ओपिनियन नॉट इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, पब्लिक ओपिनियन not influencing administration. So how it could be implemented in US to make it more efficient? What could be done? What could have been done? And he was of the opinion, obviously, democracy cannot be removed. So what can be done? If democracy cannot be removed, what can be done? What can be done is that if there would be a separation, if there can be a separation between politics and administration, it could result into efficiency, and this is the reason why he suggested dichotomy. Okay? I think, Durga, I just saw your comment related to the brightness of the board. Okay, I did not, I was not able to see your comment. Now I have seen your comment related to the brightness of the board. What I'll do is, see, actually the boards, there is not an issue related to the board's brightness. Uh, there is an, no, there may be an issue related to the lightning. Okay, light idea that is there. So what I'll do is, I will write it with a different pen. No, I'll not use the white color. I would use some other color. Okay. So I think that would, no, that would be better. Is this better? Is this better? You, no, you can tell me that if this is better. Okay. I hope this is better in comparison to, the white pen that is there. Anyways, let's come back. So Wilson did what? Wilson made that comparative analysis. Let me just summarize it. Wilson made that comparative analysis. He observed that, no, he observed that, no, the Western European countries, which were not democratic countries, and because Western European countries were not democratic countries, so administration of these Western European countries that were there, administration of this Western European countries were not influenced by politics. And he wanted to replicate that in America. And how could he replicate that in America? He could replicate that. He thought of the concept of dichotomy. He thought of separation between politics and administration. And he was of the opinion that this separation could do what? This separation could bring about the similar efficiency. And that is the reason why he had advocated for dichotomy. Okay, that is the reason why he had advocated for dichotomy. Clear? Can we conclude that Western Europe, not in the uh, late 1900s, nahi, Gunjan, it's not late 1900s, it is late 19th century. Okay, so these two have two different meanings. Late 1900s ka matlab hai 1980s, 1990s. Okay, we are talking about 1887. So it's the late 19th century that public administration can function. Well, even without democracy, public administration functions everywhere. It does not matter whether a country is a democratic country or not. आपको क्या लगता है? What do you feel? I would like to ask all of you. Don't you think in non-democratic countries also there is administration? Public administration is present in non-democratic countries also. Public administration was present in non-democratic countries also, no? It was very much present in non-democratic countries. Don't you see administration, public administration functioning in non-democratic countries? Tell me if it functions in नॉन डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्रीज और नहीं। यस, आप देखो, आपको क्या लगता है नॉर्थ कोरिया में पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन नहीं है? इफ यू लुक एट द वेस्ट एशिया, which we call as Middle East also, don't you think in Middle East also there is no the administration functions? Now administration functions in Middle East as well. Don't you think that? You look at no countries like Saudi Arabia, if you look at UAE, these countries are not democratic countries. They have kingdoms and they have a different structure, but administration functions well there as well. So country, what kind of political system is in place does not necessarily inhibit administration, है ना? एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में उनका इम्पैक्ट कितना है, ये no, this is not something which depends upon democracy or non-democratic. So basically Wilson got the idea public administration, no, public administration always existed. ठीक है, ये चीज no, this is not up for debate. Public administration always existed. Public administration, a separation between politics and administration was Wilson, no, it was the idea presented by Wilson by making that comparison, है ना? So public administration existed. It was still being studied. It was being studied as a part of political science. It was studied as a part of political science. It was being studied, है ना? लेकिन जब हम when we talk about Wilson, when he made a comparison, he was of the opinion that if they are separated, politics is separated from administration, it would become more efficient. ठीक है? Okay. Please write this down. Please write down the concept of dichotomy, just the very first paradigm that is there. Please write that down. I'm dictating a few things here. Please write that. This is the beginning. This is the beginning of evolution of public administration. Beginning of evolution of public administration as a discipline. As a discipline, full stop. The basic theme during this phase, the basic theme during this phase was Wilson advocating a separation of politics. Wilson advocating a separation of politics from administration. Politics from administration. Popularly known as politics administration dichotomy. Politics administration dichotomy. Full stop. This paradigm began with the publication of with the publication of Woodrow Wilson's essay The Study of Administration in Political Science Quarterly in 1887. Full stop. This essay laid the foundation for a separate independent and systematic study of public administration Hence, Wilson was regarded as father of public administration. Full stop. Next paragraph. He argued that politics is concerned with policy making. While administration is concerned with implementation of policy decisions. So under inverted commas, administration lies outside the sphere of politics. Inverted commas closed. And therefore, again under inverted commas, and therefore administrative questions are not political questions. Administrative questions are not political questions. Inverted commas closed. He further observed, he further observed, again under inverted commas, the field of administration, the field of administration is a field of business, is a field of business, comma, it should be removed from the study of, from the study of the hurry, 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 and strife, STRIFE, strife of politics, of politics, inverted commas closed, inverted commas closed. Clear? So this is basically, no, this is basically the dichotomy idea. And now Wilson makes number of statements. Now Wilson makes number of statements related to this concept of dichotomy. He tries to emphasize why is there a need for dichotomy. He says that both the fields are different, and therefore political questions are not administrative questions. There are number of statements that he has given in this regard. He says that administration is the field of business, and therefore the study of, no, the study of administration should be it should be separated from the study of politics, from the hurry and strife of politics, meaning that, the kind of issues which concerns the political, no, the politics, the kind of no, the kind of concerns that politics has, those concerns should not, no, it should not in any way influence the study of administration. Concerns like public opinion. Now that is what is the concern of administration, politics. It's not the concern of administration, because it is the people who vote and elect politicians. Administration, the people in administration are not elected, they are selected. So why should public opinion matter to administration? It matters to politics, but it should not matter to administration. And therefore, for these reasons, that their domain is different, he has advocated for a separation or dichotomy between politics and administration. Okay? Now, before we move on, tell me, do you have any questions here before we move on? Because now we will move on to the second paradigm. Okay? We will move on to the second paradigm. Paradigm 2. That is the era of principles. The era of principles. The era of principles. Civil unrest is a political question or administrative question. When you say civil unrest, what do you mean by that? If you say there is a civil war like situation, if there is a civil war like situation, it is an administrative question as well, because Administration has to do with management of people, management of citizens. So it has to do with that as well. So again, try and understand what is being said. I am not saying that administration does not, no, it does not do anything which concerns the people. I am not saying that administration, no, administration that is there, administration has nothing to do with citizens or people. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that public opinion should not be the, no, it should not impact the functioning of administration, or at least that is what Wilson is saying. Okay? So I am responsible for, administration is responsible for dispassionate implementation of policies. So it will implement the policies to the best possible, in the best possible manner. But how, no, how is that going to impact public opinion? Whether it is going to result into a favorable or an unfavorable public opinion is not what is the concern. It's not what is the concern of administration. Okay? That is what is being said here. Okay? Now, let us move on to this part. That is the era of principles, 1927 to 37, 10 years, the era of principles continued. And what was this very era about? The second paradigm, the second era. See, during this particular phase, there was a belief among scholars of public administration that there are certain principles which, no, which are the principles of administration. And if these principles are followed in administration, it would result into administrative efficiency. It would result into administration functioning with effectiveness, economy. So they prescribed what we call as the principles. Okay, some principles of administration. Okay, I'm repeating what I just said. So all of you have to pay attention. What am I saying? So there was a belief during this particular era that there are some principles of administration and principles of administration. And what would these principles of administration look like? What would these principles of administration be like? So these principles of administration will do what? These principles of administration will make public administration more efficient. It would make administration more economical. It would bring more efficiency and effectiveness in administration. This was the basic belief. Okay? Now, these principles of administration were proposed as scientific principles. So they were considered as scientific principles. Okay? Now, when we say scientific principles, what does that mean? So, scientific principles has certain features. What are those? Primarily, two important features. First, predictability. Second, universality. Meaning that these principles that are there, they were predictable. That means application of these principles will result into predictable consequences, predictable results. है ना? Scientific principles work exactly like this. It works exactly like this, है ना? साइंस में अगर आप जितने भी प्रिंसिपल्स है, no, law of thermodynamics, principles related to maybe no, motion, force, etc. All these have predictable results. So they proposed these principles of administration as scientific principles. Why? because they believed that once these principles of administration are implemented, these principles of administration are going to result into, no, there will be predictable consequence. What was those? 3 E's: economy, efficiency, effectiveness. So application of principles, resulting consequence, 3 E's: economy, efficiency, effectiveness. So these principles were predictable. It is going to have predictable results. Secondly, it was also proposed as scientific principles because the scholars who proposed these principles were of the opinion that these are universal. Like scientific principles being universal, these principles are also universal. So it is applicable to all kinds of organization. It is applicable to what? It is applicable to all kinds of organizations. So it's not just applicable to no, it's not just applicable to public administration. It is applicable to administration universally. So whether it is public administration, whether it is private administration, whether it is, maybe non-governmental organizations and administration in non-governmental organizations, whether it is a large organization, whether it is a small organization, whether it is a manufacturing organization, whether it is a retail organization, whether it is a service sector organization, none of that matters. And these principles will universally apply to all such organizations, to all organizations. So, because they believed in the predictability and they also believed in its universality, that is the reason why they proposed these principles as scientific principles. What did they do? They proposed it as scientific principle. Clear? So, what did I say? I will summarize it. And before we move on, let me summarize this. During this particular era, there were scholars who believed in some principles of administration. They believed in principles of administration. Okay? Now, when they believed in the principles of administration, what were their beliefs? Their belief was that these principles are going to have predictable results. That means application of these principles, application of principles will do what? Application of principles would result into, it will do what? It will result into predictable results. And there would be predictable consequences. What would that consequence be? 3 E's. 3 E's. Economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Okay. Application of these principles will do what? Application of these principles would result into, it would result into predictable consequences. So predictability. Secondly, they also believed that these principles were universal. These were universal principles. And here, when we say universal principles, what does that mean? Universal principles. It means that these principles will apply to all kinds of organization, irrespective of its nature. It will be applicable to all kinds of organization. And they believed that this would apply to all kinds of organization, irrespective of its nature, whether it is no, whether it is a small, large, whether it is a public, private, any kind of organization, it would apply. So what you see here is that because it talks about predictability and universality, these principles were proposed as scientific principles. What was it proposed as? It was proposed as scientific principles. It was proposed as scientific principles. They believed, the scholars who proposed these principles, they believed that these principles are they are scientific in nature. They are scientific, they are science. Like, the principles of the principles of physics, principles of mathematics, principles of other principles that are there. Similarly, these principles are also scientific principles. That was what was believed in. These principles are scientific principles. Now, what do you think? Is it possible? Is it possible that there could be some principles of administration? What do you believe? Okay. What is your opinion? What do you think? Is there a possibility? Is there a possibility? Who can tell me this? Both those who are present on app and on YouTube. Rohit says it is not possible. Krishti also says not possible. Abhay also says it is not possible. Anyone who believes that there is a possibility of principles of administration, and that too scientific principles? Anyone who has that belief? Principles are, they believe that principles are predictable, and none of you agree to it. None of you agree to it. And you are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct that these principles would not, no, it is not possible for one simple reason. What is that reason? Human beings are not, their behavior is not predictable. आपको लगता है कि ह्यूमन बीइंग्स प्रिडिक्टेबल होते हैं? और कोई भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ह्यूमन बीइंग से चलता है. There is, every organization has a human component in it. Yes, there are other resources, but the human component is also there. And do you think human beings function like machines? No, we don't. We don't function like machines. It's not like that. No, it's not like that. There are some there are some programs, and we will function on the basis of those programs. No, it does not work like that. It absolutely does not work like that. देखो, इस तरह से समझते हैं, इस तरह से समझते हैं कि अगर मैं किसी सिचुएशन में हूं, तो मेरे डिसीजंस जो हो सकते हैं, that I take in that situation, and if you are in a similar situation and the decisions that you take may be different, I may consider option A, but you may consider option B. So according to you, option A, your decision would reflect option A, choice A. My decision could be option B. there is always a discrepancy in how human beings look at a situation. There are so many factors. There are so many factors that influence our behavior that the possibility of all of us behaving in a same manner similarly is very, very, very rare. If if it is even possible, it is very rare. And therefore, there is a problem with the idea. There is a problem with an idea of proposing principles of administration. ठीक है? Anyways, देखो, अगर आपको ऐसा लगता है ना, some of you have mentioned that, no, some of you have mentioned this idea that yes, there is. No, it is not. ठीक है? It is not there. Human beings, देखो हम अलग है. देखो, आप खुद सोचो ना, there are so many things that influence our behavior. And all of us have different attitudes. All of have different scientific, our temperament is different. All of us have different capabilities of reasoning. And all of these factors is what contributes to our discrepancy. How there is a discrepancy that is there. So we cannot say that we would work similar. But this is what they believed in. Now, Gunjan, it was never proved that these principles are scientific. It was only proposed that these are scientific principles. Those scholars who proposed these principles considered it to be scientific. It was never proved. कोई भी चीज साइंटिफिक तब तक नहीं होती है जब आप उसको प्रूव जब तक नहीं करते. इन्होंने कभी भी कोशिश भी नहीं की कि वो प्रूव करें कि देयर आर साइंटिफिक प्रिंसिपल. ठीक है? प्लीज राइट दिस डाउन बिफोर वी मूव ऑन. प्लीज राइट दिस डाउन. During this stage, the scholars believed that there are certain principles of administration. There are certain principles of administration which can be discovered, and applied to increase efficiency, economy in public administration. Efficiency, economy in public administration. Full stop. They argued that administration is administration irrespective of its nature and context of work. Therefore, these principles of administration these principles of administration have universal validity, validity, full stop. Hence, they claimed, hence, they claimed, they claimed public administration, public administration to be a science, to be a science, to be a science based on some scientific principles, based on some scientific principles. Full stop. Full stop. Okay? So this is basically the principles. But before we conclude this particular paradigm, there is one more very important, there is one more very important thing that has to be understood, which is that if we go back to something that we had discussed earlier, okay, okay, that slide is not available right now. We will draw it here itself. We had previously drawn a diagram where we had drawn a circle and we had divided the circle into two distinct parts, where one of those parts we called it as public administration, and this circle depicted administration, and this part was private administration. And we had drawn this diagram earlier in the very first lecture itself. We had made that distinction. Now, if you look at this this diagram tells us what? This diagram tells us that there is a distinction between public and private administration. What do you think? Do you agree to this distinction? I'm asking all of you this question. Do all of you agree to this distinction, that there is a difference between public and private administration? And if you agree to this distinction, tell me why. Why is there a difference? Why is there a difference? Why is there a distinction? What do you believe? Is there a difference? Srishti says, to an extent. To an extent, not completely is, sorry, Hardik says that. Srishti says, yes, there is a difference because goals are different. Okay? Anything else? Anything else? Anyone who would like to add anything here? Anyone who would like to add anything? Yes, there exists a distinction. A goal of private entity is different from that of government. Yes, difference is there. Goals of profit and welfare is what Rohit says. Gunjan also agrees to it. And you are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct in this regard that there is a difference. And one of the primary reasons for the difference is that private administration has different goals. The goals of private administration is different from the goals of public administration, because private administration would work for profit motive. So they would work for profit. Whereas when we talk about public administration, their goals would be different. More important goals for them is the goal of welfare. It is the goal of welfare. It is not profit, but it is the goal of welfare. So there is a distinction between public administration with that of private administration. Both are different. Does the scholars of this era, that is the era of principles, what do you think? Do they differentiate between public administration and private administration? I'm repeating this idea. Tell me, according to you, those scholars who proposed this idea of principles of administration believed in principles being universal. What do you think? Do they accept the difference between public and private administration? Do they accept this difference? That yes, there is a difference between the two? Do they also accept it? Think over it. सोचो, बताओ. Most of you have said no. They do not differentiate between public and private administration. Why? You are absolutely correct, Abhay, when you say that what they propose is that they propose universal principles. That means if they would have appreciated a difference between public and private administration, they would have always appreciated that these principles cannot be similarly applied. But they do not do that. They do not say that. They simply believe in the idea that these principles are universal. So it is equally applicable to both public and private. And therefore there is no difference, because if there would have been a difference between the two, public administration with private administration, they would have never proposed this as universal principles. But they did propose it as universal principles. Why? Because they believed that there is no difference between public administration and private administration, and that is the reason why they did do that. Okay? And that is the reason why there is a statement which is used to define this particular era. What is that statement? You will write this also. This is a statement which is used It is that statement which is used to describe the era of principles. What is the statement? The statement says that the public aspect of public administration was virtually dropped. The public aspect of public administration was virtually dropped. Why is it being said that it was virtually dropped? Because of the same reason that the scholars of this particular era, they did not believe that public administration is different. So they dropped the term public. So they believed that administration is administration. So if it is public or private, it does not matter. And therefore, the statement that public, the public aspect of public administration was virtually dropped. Okay? Tell me, is this understood or not? Yes. Anyone who has not understood this particular statement, anyone who has not understood it, okay? Public aspect of public administration was virtually dropped. Okay? So we have completed the second paradigm, the second phase also. And this is also where we end our discussion for today. So what you will be doing is going back, revising whatever we have discussed. We will be meeting tomorrow the same time. And what you will be doing is, if you have any queries, you will ask me, I will address those questions. Okay? Rachit says virtually dropped. Virtually dropped मतलब almost dropped, है ना? एक तरीके से आप कह सकते हो कि टर्म तो पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन यूज हो रहा है, लेकिन पब्लिक एस्पेक्ट पर एम्फेसाइज नहीं किया जा रहा है, क्योंकि दे बिलीव्ड दैट दीज प्रिंसिपल्स आर यूनिवर्सल है। उनका बिलीफ क्या है? उनका बिलीफ ये है कि प्रिंसिपल्स तो यूनिवर्सल है, तो पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन हो या प्राइवेट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन हो, इससे क्या ही फर्क पड़ता है। इसीलिए द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ इट बीइंग वर्चुअली ड्रॉप्ड means the same principles can be applied to earn profit and achieve welfare. Absolutely, Gunjan. This is what they believed in. ठीक है? हम अभी जजमेंट नहीं कर रहे हैं कि वो सही बोल रहे थे या गलत बोल रहे थे, अभी हमने वो नहीं कहा है। हमने सिर्फ ये कहा है कि what did they believe in, है ना? हमने सिर्फ ये कहा है कि did they believe in that? Yes, so they did believe in that. ठीक है? So that's it for today. Thank you everyone. We'll meet tomorrow. The next lecture, same time tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.